But if I say today's episode, I feel like today's episodes went really, really well. And if I could do it differently, or next time I will do differently, I'm going to bring this, I'll bring a more pressing story in with more specifics or whatever. I'll make sure that I look at the clock more, whatever it is. I just think it's very easy to get caught in the land of or when almost nothing is really set up that way.
If you can't understand that self-belief and humility are both important for success, you are in trouble. You are. The sign of maturity and sophistication is your ability to hold two seemingly opposing ideas in your consciousness simultaneously. It's very, very important. Can you be abundant and scarce enough to get your shit done today?
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. Today, for episode number 1904, the power of the and. I believe it's the genius of the and in Jim Collins' books, I do believe.
Collins' books.
I don't want to steal his. I don't want to steal his exact thing, but this is from Jim Collins' books. I was thinking of this last night. I was doing the dishes. Taryn's out of town. Had a little. I took a little gummy. I'll keep it a buck with you. Keep it 100. I took a little gummy before I did the dishes. Special gummy. They make doing the dishes so much better.
Quick side tangent.
Yep.
There's a movie called 50 First Dates.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is pretty funny. Also very cute.
Okay.
There's a scene where Adam Sandler's character says, "Hey, if that's one of your special brownies, don't let the dolphins eat any of those." And he turns and he says, he starts laughing. He says, "How do you think I get them to do double flippies and play with the white kids?" And I thought that was a really funny scene.
A little movie reference.
I also saw dolphins in South Carolina this past week, so I was they were on my mind, which goes back to the manifestation thing we talked about in the last episode. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. Which is, I got dolphins on the mind because I got to see a dolphin 15 feet from me off the dock. Many of them, actually. Only one of them was 15 feet from me, but it was awesome.
I watched Knocked Up last night.
Oh, no.
Such a classic.
It's a classic. It's not...
I was dying.
What do you got? The earrings, moon rocks in there?
Yeah. It was. I might watch Forgetting Sarah Marshall tonight. So Taryn's away for the weekend. So
yeah. So we watched a little bit of Meet the Fockers.
It's a good one.
Oh, it's classic, man.
All right, let me get back on here. Yeah, let me get back on here. We can do a movie, Jeff and Jeff movie trivia. We'll do another day. That'll be our 6th podcast that we
Every
do
now
together.
and then we got to bring it in, man. That was relevant.
I'm gonna bring it in.
You had a gummy, so that was irrelevant.
I'm gonna bring it in.
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna bring it in.
All right.
If you've heard this before, you've heard my journey, my marijuana journey. Is like I used to smoke a ton of weed back in the day. I thought it was it's like I can be super productive. And I still was. I think I was above average productivity, but not as productive as I thought I was, for sure. Then I stopped all cannabis for years, however many years, and I've been dabbling with edibles again. Because I get two things. One, I get very creative, and two, I think about really weird stuff that connects dots for me. I don't know how to explain it. Well, last night I was doing the dishes, and I had this moment where I was thinking of... You've heard me say this before. I value the way you end a relationship, and it's always my goal where I would like to think that I could text anybody that I've been in a relationship with in the past and they'd have positive things to say about me. And again, you can only influence that so much. But I was thinking last night of one person I dated where I know it wouldn't be a positive outcome. It just wouldn't be. And I was thinking to myself,
the right person?
No, you don't know this person.
Oh.
You don't know this person. No, that person would be positive. I could text that person right now. For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been long enough.
Also,
also F you. That person texted me and said, "Hey," I don't remember what they said, but the last sign off was also F you. It's like, okay. But they texted me after that and said, "Hey, you look happy," and so it was good.
Yeah.
But the person I'm thinking of, for a long time, I blamed it on circumstance. I blamed it on, I got super busy, and then I was traveling, and then it was the holidays, and it was blah, blah, blah. It was a bunch of stuff. Last night I had a moment where I said, and you are also a coward. And that was where this episode came to be. The power of the and is you can excuse away something forever. You can say it's this or this. You can say this is the way I feel, but, and negate what you just said. There's something about being able to have the duality of things on both sides. The truth is, circumstantially, yes, there was a lot going on in my life, and I also was a coward. And both of those things can live in the same scenario, and it doesn't necessarily have to change the outcome, but I think it is something worth looking into. I shared a post yesterday. I got a lot of people message me about this. One of the big podcasts had this guy on, and he's a cowboy, and he does some self-improvement stuff, and he said, a real man doesn't need therapy. A real man, essentially it was, a real man needs to tell the people around him the burdens that he's holding for them. And I was like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. I can't stand that. And I had a lot of people message me, and most of which were female. And then it was awesome. It was like the old days where I was just talking to people. I was just shooting off audio messages. It was the best.
This is when I got the audio?
Yeah, this is when you get the audio.
Nice.
And somebody messaged me and said, they were talking about that, and they said, what's your take? And I said, my take is that what that person is trying to explain is they're trying to explain that you should be able to talk about the invisible work that you're doing in your relationship, in all relationships, with the understanding that the person that you're talking to about the invisible work should also have the permission to do the same. I think that's what he's trying to say. Where that connects to mental health, I think he's missing the piece. I really do. I really think he's missing the piece. And then we were going deep. I was talking to this person. We were just shooting audios back and forth. And I said, I think what is being missed with this is there is a duality that this person is saying there's no and. There's no and. Yes, in an ideal world, you would have the courage and your partner would be welcoming of receiving the feedback that you feel like you're doing X amount of invisible work and you'd like that to be seen, and vice versa. Your partner would be able to sit you down and say, hey, Alan, I just want to share vulnerably that I feel like I'm doing a lot of things that are going under the radar that are not being seen, commented on, or appreciated, and I do think I might be building resentment. Okay? And there also are infinite things that have happened in your past that might be affecting you in a way that would be beneficial to talk to someone about it. I think those are two different silos.
100%.
So that all of that is the reason I wanted to do this episode.
Any conversation in the history of conversations that starts with a real man,
I know.
You got to be a little cautious of what comes after that. Did you know that a real man?
I also
shut
want
off
to
to anything I'm going to say.
I also want to preface. Again, we're podcasters. We've done a lot of episodes. This was 1 minute taken out of a 2-hour conversation.
Yeah, of course.
Contextually, I don't know what they were talking about before. I don't know what they were talking about after. But that is the clip that they chose to share.
Well, a real man wouldn't worry about that.
That's true. Yeah, a real man would. I'm not a real man. That's the thing. At the end of the day, I'm not. I'm not a real man. Whatever you consider a real man.
Oh man.
But that's why I wanted to do this, because I think the content that is this is a fact. There is no flexibility within this.
It's polarizing.
It's polarizing.
And polarizing it means you love it or you hate it, which is
it gets
dramatized.
And it gets attention regardless.
Yeah. The sexy fundamental principles don't get as much attention.
And I think that is the genius, or in this case, the power of the and, because things can exist in the same universe. It doesn't mean, just because you feel like it's one answer doesn't mean there isn't another side of the coin. There's always two sides of the coin. And just because maybe you're not ready to look at it yet, for a long time, I thought it was all circumstance. It was either I wasn't brave enough or the circumstances just happened and this is the way it went.
What's your truth now?
Both. Circumstantially, things were happening and I was a coward. And then it got to the place where it seemed like too much time had passed for me to talk to this person, and then that was it. So yeah, both.
If I was Kev's coach, this is so interesting.
You are technically, so.
In some ways, I would say. Mentor, coach, whatever label you want to give it.
Butthead.
I would focus on the thing that you can control. So I would... Do you ever... Kev... I'm going to bring everyone behind the scenes for a second. Sometimes Kev says to me things along the lines of you act as if everything is within everyone's control. Because I'm so big on personal responsibility. No, it's the things outside of control there's nothing you can do about it, so there's no utility in that. Okay, Kev, that relationship you're thinking of, hypothetical. Okay, let's say her name is Jane. All right, that's not the real name. I'm just using John Doe and Jane Doe. Okay.
You call me, if we were going to make up names, I'd like to be Tarzan, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right, the female you dated is Tarzan.
No,
okay.
I'm Tarzan.
All right, you're Tarzan and
they're Jane.
Okay, they're Jane. Okay, cool. So Kevin's
Jesus.
Tarzan, and you can't change your name in my story.
It's my story too. I'm involved in it. I can do whatever I want. And
all right, so Tarzan and Jane. We've gone off script. There is no script. Tarzan and Jane. Real quick. Here we go. We're back. We're pulling it back and reining it in. Tarzan and Jane have a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Tarzan used to believe that it was all circumstance. There's nothing he could do about it. Tarzan now believes that he was a coward. And that if he wasn't a coward, circumstances might have been different. True? Yes and no.
Yes and no. Yeah.
See, there's the and again.
And yes
Okay.
and no.
And if anyone out there watching or listening is certainty-driven unconsciously, which all humans are, you're not going to like all of the uncertainty of yes and no. See, there's an absolute thing. Everything's a spectrum. The point that I was really trying to help land is if I was Kevin's coach, I would only talk about you being a coward. I wouldn't talk about the circumstances at all. The circumstances are only relevant to the extent that you can impact them. There's a circle of concern. There's one of the things that I'll share is this past week I was traveling, family, all this stuff. One of the things that was alarming to me, and I will say this publicly, is how much we all have these circles of concern. So a circle of concern, everyone picture a circle drawn, and there's 3 layers. The outer layer is what you have no influence and no control over. The next layer in is what you have influence over, but you can't control. So Kevin would be a good example of that. I can influence Kevin, but I cannot control him. I don't own him. All right. The inner layer is what I can control. I try really hard in my coaching to get people to focus on only what they can control and influence. And I try really hard not to talk about things and concern myself with things that are completely outside of my circle of concern and circle of influence. Because if everyone out there watching or listening were to focus their attention on what they can control and what they can influence, aka what you can actually do something about, you would immediately take more control and therefore captain your own life better. And if you did that, you'd inspire others to do the same and the whole world would become a better place. But this past week when I was with friends and family and travel and all this stuff, I overheard a lot of conversations. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, they're really concerning themselves with a lot of things that have no relevance to their actual life. And I try really hard not to do that. And so bringing this back to the genius of the and, the power of the and, the point of the and, everything's a spectrum. Is Kevin humble? Yes and no. Yes, more than most. No, compared to his potential. He can always be more humble. Does Kevin believe in himself? Yes, compared to the statistical norm, but no, compared to what he could. You see how everything is an and, everything's a spectrum?
You just said but in the second one, you son of a bitch.
Sorry. The 0 to 10, that's why we use 0 to 10 on everything. Is Kevin wealthy? Yes, compared to someone who is not. No, compared to Bill Gates. It's a spectrum. If Bill Gates is a 10, which he is, in wealth, only in wealth, then Kevin would be a 2. If the statistical norm, you'd be a 0.00, right? But the point is everything's a spectrum. But here's the problem. When you think in spectrums, dude, everything becomes more complex and it's a lot more challenging to move forward. And so that's where we get into cognitive capabilities. And if you look at cognitive development, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10 years old, they can't handle that much complexity. So they have to blanket statement things. And so the more sophisticated you become in your cognitive intellect, the more you can actually handle of complexity and the more you can understand the world. And the best metaphor for this is apparently, and I don't know if this is true, but Inuits in Alaska, they have 12 different distinctions for types of snow. Kevin and I don't. Why? Because we don't use snow. If we were to watch martial arts, Kevin and I, he's going to have all the distinctions. He's going to know what holds and what grabs and what that punch is. I'm not going to know anything. Why? I don't care. Just don't care. Once I start studying martial arts, I'm going to care more and I'm going to know more and I'm going to have more distinctions. I remember last piece. Kevin sat me down one time. We were in the studio. And he said, "How do you know all this?" And I said to him, I had to know all this. These distinctions, these breakthroughs, these understandings that I have, brother, I had to know them in order to make good decisions to get to where we are. I didn't just to our last episode to connect this fully, or maybe it was earlier to this episode, I'm not sure. But if you want to be a successful martial artist and you don't have any distinctions about the martial arts, you're not going to win. You can't want to be a professional football player and then not study football. You can't want to... Kevin's like, well, you can, you won't succeed.
Well, that's a distinction right there.
Exactly.
You can, you can not want to do the work and want the result. You're just most likely not going to get it.
There you go. Yeah, you can't want the result and get the result and not want the work.
A lot of ands.
NLU listener, what is happening? I just wanted to jump in here and let you know if you want to get to the next level faster, we have a free virtual monthly meetup at the first Thursday of every month. You can connect with like-minded people and become a bigger part of this amazing global community. The link to register will be in the show notes. If you've ever taken discrete mathematics or logic or rationality, there's
I did.
Gates.
They have that at Yale, right? I believe that's one of the classes I went through when I was at Yale. I think that was one of them. Yeah. Sounds familiar.
Oh, my goodness. And or discrete mathematics is all about logic. Kevin or Alan is very different than Kevin and Alan. And the Kevin and Alan are more powerful than Alan or Kevin. And I really hope that everyone can start thinking in the and, because there are some places where but is appropriate. But if you can't think in duality, if you can't understand that self-belief and humility are both important for success, you are in trouble. You are. The sign of maturity and sophistication is your ability to hold two seemingly opposing ideas in your consciousness simultaneously. It's very, very important. Can you be abundant and scarce enough to get your shit done today? Can you be spiritually connected and wildly disciplined and gritty? Can you have tons of self-belief and the humility to say, I kind of suck still? You really need both. And dude, you and I don't think we had both when we first started, nearly compared to what we do now. And because we weren't as sophisticated in this.
I would agree. When I tell my story, I talk about how one of the things that set off my rock bottom was my partner left me. And I always say, and that's exactly what she should have done. And people say, wow, that's really mature. How'd you get there? And I said, I wasn't there back then. That took years of... Back then, I was like, she's crazy. And here's the thing. And crazy, throw that term around. She was inaccurate with some of the stuff that she believed, and she made the right choice. Those can be the same. Just like statistically speaking, I was a good partner, and I was less good than I was in the beginning, just in terms of what I was able to give. Because I think it just, to Alan's point, I think it gives you room for growth and room for opportunity. If I say, today's episode went amazing, and there's nothing I could do to change it, then that's it. then this is done and there's no growth and this ends. This part is done. This doesn't connect to the rest of my life. But if I say today's episode, I feel like today's episodes went really, really well, and if I could do it differently, or next time I will do differently, I'm going to bring this, I'll bring a more pressing story in with more specifics or whatever. I'll make sure that I look at the clock more, whatever it is. I just think it's very easy to get caught in the land of or when almost nothing is really set up that way.
Yeah.
It's just, if anybody ever comes to you and says, I have the answer, I don't believe them. I don't believe you have the answer. I don't think there is just one answer. I don't think it works that. I think there are too many moving pieces. If we're at a restaurant and there's 5 menu items and you say, I believe I have the answer for what you're going to like the most. Cool. Right? Awesome. But that's because there's only 5 options. There's only 5 options. There's limited. There's not that many things to get wrong. There's not that many choices. How many choices are there in life? An infinite amount. Infinite. And that's a lot.
And that's
It's
overwhelming.
It's more than 1 million. You know what I mean?
In the book, The Art of Thinking Clearly, that we're reading in book club, it talks about how overwhelmed people are. I looked it up earlier. I Googled this. And
Wait, let me give it a guess. Let me give it a guess before you give me the stat. What is it?
The percentage of human beings on planet Earth who have been diagnosed with depression.
Ah, shit. The percentage of human beings on planet Earth that have been diagnosed with depression. You gotta think right
Again,
off the bat.
Just from a Google research. Again, I didn't go much deeper than the AI curation. Okay.
10%. I'm gonna say probably 10% don't even have access to get a medical diagnosis. I'm gonna say, shit. I'm gonna either look really good or really bad.
Whatever, man. The goal is to be accurate, not to look good.
I'm gonna say it's 25%.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. It's 29. Dude,
29.
I can't even believe it's that high.
29
That
is
is-
higher than I thought.
That's wildly high. I also looked this up, and again, I looked it up in the U.S. because I'm in the U.S., not because everything's about the U.S. I don't want Kevin and I to fall into that category of the U.S. thinking everything's about us. Only 37.7% of the United States population, which is 340 million people, has any higher education. That was fascinating for me.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be higher than that, for sure. And then the other piece of this, too, just a total random side tangent. Gladiator 2 came out. I watched it. Kevin asked me how I think it is. I thought it was great, but he also anchored me saying it might not be good, so maybe he anchored me low. I thought it was freaking awesome. Loved it. Highly recommend. That said, I looked up the Roman Empire and how large it was at its peak. 1.9 million square miles. And I looked that up in comparison to the largest countries on Earth. The largest country on Earth is Russia. The next largest, I believe, is Canada, actually, in terms of geography, square miles. And then the U.S., I think, is 4th. But, again, I know Russia's very cold. Canada, obviously, very cold. Anyways, just fascinating stats. One of the reasons why I brought this in, to bring this back to the end, it's almost like if you want to make an effective choice for your life, I'm using captain your own life a lot. I was on a boat this week, so everything's boats and water now. If you want to captain your own life, let's say the wind is blowing in the wrong direction. Let's say circumstances suck. Let's say it's choppy. You have to understand the ocean, understand your boat, contextualize where you currently are, and contextualize where you actually want to go. And then you have to have someone with the skills who actually knows how to sail and or drive a boat. And then you have to hope that you don't die on the rocks or whatever. And even if you do, you have to find a way to survive on the island long enough to be rescued or whatever. The point is life is really alarmingly difficult. I understand now why people don't achieve their dreams. I really do. It's not easy. You basically have to design everything. You have to, if you really want to achieve your goals and dreams, you either have to roll the dice and hope for the best and play the lottery, or you have to have very clear goals. You have to understand yourself. You have to understand other people. You have to understand the world. You have to understand your industry. You have to understand business. You have to understand all of the things and make a choice knowing that you're wrong. Everything has a percent error. If I say Kevin is in shape, with what percent error? And compared to what? Everything's relative.
Compared to you, son.
Compared to Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, Kevin isn't even remotely in shape.
No.
Compared to the statistical average American male, he's in great shape. So it all depends on what you're comparing to. It all depends on context. And so all of us have to figure out how to learn how to think as accurately as possible and still make a choice even when we can't. And because if you stay on the fence just with analysis paralysis, you never move forward, you never learn. So you're really good at taking action even when you know very little. That was one of the things that was really good for you and me working together is Kev would take action even knowing almost nothing with love. I would know everything and still not take action. It's really important to drive to 5 and figure out what's your weakness and to bring it back to self-improvement, holistic self-improvement, health, wealth, life, and love, dream chasers. If you want to be healthy, wealthy, and in love, which you do, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this, you're going to have to figure out which end of this spectrum you're on and get closer to 5. Is it self-belief or is it humility? I needed humility. Kevin needed self-belief. Okay, drive to 5. Is it I'm goal-oriented, but I don't know my core values? That was me. Or is it Kev knows his core values but doesn't have any goals? Is it strategy or is it go with the flow? And you need both. And so no wonder why our podcast doesn't go viral. Everything is a spectrum and everything is in the middle.
I think
because we're trying to help people really succeed in the real world, not try to say something like what that cowboy or whatever said to try to go viral. Because that went viral, I'm assuming.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, probably. Well, it's a massive podcast, so it's like...
Yeah. It has much more likelihood of going viral than Kevin and I explaining the full spectrum.
I also had a really interesting... Again, I've known this, but it was like, oh my gosh, my goodness, it makes so much sense. The reason... Ooh, layers. What many people do is in order to stay relevant, they find other things that are becoming more relevant than they are, and then they hop on the train. That's why you see a lot of podcasts that have like weird guests on. It's like, why the hell do you have this person on? Well, they have an audience. They have momentum. So now it's no longer about who has the best ideas. It's about who has the most momentum. And oftentimes, the people with the most momentum actually have the worst ideas.
Agreed.
There is a guy named Dave Asprey. Allegedly. All this is alleged, of course. No, this isn't. This is factual. He said something along the lines of, you should not lift weights. Every exercise you do should be done with resistance bands. And it's like, his audience is massive. He says some of the dumbest shit you will ever hear. And his audience is massive. But he gets on stages and he gets big shows and he does all this stuff because he has relevance. It is. I mean, it's most of what he says is just factually, measurably inaccurate. I mean, they've done studies on this, right? Yeah, resistance is great. Yeah, go use some resistance bands. The people who have the most muscle on the planet lift weights. And that's...
Hey, how many times out of 10?
How many times out of 10 what?
The most muscular people on the planet lifting weights. How many times?
9.9.
No, every time.
Well, there's some people out there that do calisthenics.
They don't have the most muscle mass on the planet.
Yeah, but like, this is and.
Okay.
They're very well muscled.
It's not a principle. I remember one time it's like...
We do have to go here shortly.
I know.
Quickly.
Okay. I always use gravity. Engineer. I'm an engineer. 9.8 meters per second squared, despite Kevin's opinion. How many times?
10 out of 10, evidently.
Every time. Yeah. There's principles that apply no matter what. And then you have to contextualize them into your own experience. And that's what Kevin and I are trying to help people with. And that's what we're trying to do as well, by the way. I mean, I'm not as more evolved and mature we become, the less preachy we become, I feel.
I don't know. I get nervous sometimes. I think I know I have a lot of answers to some things, but I know that I don't know anything. but I know more than I ever have. That's
And yeah,
I
know
don't
I know nothing
anything.
compared to what there is to know, and I know more than I ever have.
Yeah, it's a weird thing.
Yeah, it is.
It's a weird thing, but I just want to get better.
Same.
Just want to get better.
I know I have to go. So
yeah, you do have to go. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Next Level Nation, make sure you are subscribed on whatever podcast platform you are watching or listening, or I think those are the only two ways you can really consume our content currently. Maybe in the future we'll be virtual reality in your headsets. Can you please stop
That's
kicking
my
stuff?
laptop.
Oh, you turned it on.
It's a gaming laptop.
Alan and I will be in your living rooms. Alan can be, if you want Alan to be in a separate room, he can. You and I.
Eventually, he'll be able to smell us through the microphone.
That's a dangerous game. I've been using natural deodorant lately.
Same.
Let me tell you.
By natural, you mean none.
No, I've been using natural deodorant.
Oh, I've been using none.
I respect it.
Except on travel days.
Yeah, stay away from me. But I've been using Natty deodorant, and it doesn't work. Go figure. It doesn't work
nearly as well. Yeah.
But it's all good. All right. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we don't have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Talk to you soon.